Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Nightreign talk. We're talking about the future of the game with all the data mining that's been going on, future expectations with what they've told us anyway, the timeline for all of it, like Hjolster, when are we getting that? In 5 weeks time? But to add to that, of course, we've had the announcement literally today as I make this video. Officially, the Deep of Night mode has been revealed, which is something that we've known quite a lot about from data mining, as we'll discuss in this video. But now they've at least said, hey, it is real and it is coming, and when? Beginning on Thursday, September 11th, which certainly affects the timeline we're going to talk about in regards to Hjolster and the Everdark version of that. Reading the post, it says the Deep of Night is a high difficulty challenge mode designed for seasoned players who have navigated through the night many times. In the Deep of Night, the enemies that appear are stronger than usual. You can also not specify the target Night Lord, and ongoing terrain changes are not reflected. Special items exist called the Depth Relics, exclusive to this mode, and weapons with multiple additional but also detrimental effects will appear. Further, the difficulty increases the deeper you descend, and the ratings will fluctuate based on wins and losses. Deep of Night is a high difficulty mode that provides a thrilling and challenging adventure. We encourage you to try and see if you can surpass Depth 3, referencing the fact that Depths 4 to 5 will feature an endless battle for those seeking even greater thrills. So while we knew it was meant to be kind of an endless concept, now we have confirmation that 1, 2 and 3 for Depths is kind of the content, and beyond that, 4 and 5 is kind of an endless version that you could engage with if you want. But I like the fact that they've made 1, 2 and 3 more of a challenge that once you've done it, you've done it. But yeah, there's lots for us to talk about. The Deep of Night mode comes on September 11th. But in regards to the Everdark timeline, are we even going to get an Everdark version of Hjolster, and when? The Everdark Sovereign bosses have kind of a predictable timeline now. We had the initial first set, the first 3, and then a 3-week break after that to repeat the bosses. Then we had 4 weeks of new bosses for the next set of 4, which we just finished with Gladius. So reasonably we can expect another 4 weeks of resetting and repeating those before we get our final Everdark boss, the final boss, the Hjolster. Based on that, we could expect it to be the 25th of September, if not sooner. By then, that brings us to the start of quarter 4 on October 1st. So by then, or at that point, we should expect new information about the DLC, other updates, other stuff like the Deep of Night mode we'll be talking about a bit now. We know the DLC is going to come sometime this year. I'm not going to expect it in October, but November or December, that's way more possible, obviously. Right now, we consider the fact that in their original posts about all of this, they never outright said Everdark Hjolster though. So if you were to come on the 25th of September, you'd think we'd hear about that pretty soon, huh? But for the moment, we've not heard anything about it, and now we have this new announcement about the Deep of Night mode coming on the 11th of September. How's it all going to turn out? I don't know. In regards to the DLC, we know that we're going to get new Nightfarers. We know we're going to get new Night Lords. And it also seems very likely that we'll actually get some varied Shadow of the Erdtree DLC content, which we have very little of right now. As I've said before, for Shadow of Erdtree content, I think there's a ton of options, all the different weapon types which could easily be included or based around a Nightfarer on. There's all the bosses that they could choose from that. I trust them when it comes to new Night Lords and brand new boss fights. They've done an overall great job with that, even if the balancing for the Everdark version has been a bit off for some of them and had to be patched. In regards to new Nightfarers, who's to say what we're going to get for sure? But we will discuss that slightly in the final section of this video. Right now, I want to see something that is completely new that doesn't really exist right now. So, where's the Hammer main? Where's a Pyromancer? Where's a dedicated support like healing and buffing? And yeah, all of the different Shadow of Erdtree weapon types. Backhand blades, Perfumer's a popular one, Martial Artist. There's a lot of great concepts and options. Hopefully they go for quite a few. So let's now get into the Deep of Night mode and what we actually know about it beyond that official announcement, which actually tells us very little directly, in fact. We know it's coming on September 11th. We know it's going to be a hard mode, right? They've referenced the fact that there's some kind of rank concept, that there's going to be new relics for that mode. And in there, you're going to have new equipment, weapons that have multiple passives, but there's also going to be new detrimental effects, both on the relics and the new weapons. Now we know that there's going to be a depth 1, 2 and 3 where it seems like that's what they want most players to defeat, whereas depth 4 and 5 is only going to be for the people that really just want to play this game forever, as it is, as they call it, an endless battle. What more actual details can we look at from the datamining. The Deep of Night mode is basically an option where you can go in and take on increasing difficulty as you progress a run after a run. Basically, you're going to go from depth 1 down to 5 and keep progressing. Each depth, you're going to be dealing with enemies that have increased damage and health, as well as making it harder to stagger these stronger units like bosses in general. You're not actually going to be able to choose your targets in this context either, so you can't make a plan about doing this specific Night Lord and working on whatever weaknesses it has until you're in the run and see what you're up against. One of the most notable aspects of this though is these red form enemies. They're now being referred to as mutated enemies. Now, standard mutated enemies are going to be dealing about twice the amount of damage they normally do, and they have double the health compared to normal. Though, this is also affected by how deep you are in the run. So the greater the depth you're on currently, the more this scales and combines, so they can be very scary. A mutated version of a boss though, they have increased damage and health, but it seems to vary a lot more between bosses, with a greater focus on health increases on the first depth, but as you get deeper, the damage multiplies a lot. Now depending on the enemy type, this scaling varies based on like what's currently already hard, so it doesn't need to be scaled as much, which is a thankful no. Ultimately though, all mutated enemies are going to hit a lot harder and take a lot more to kill, and at greater depths, it's going to get crazy. But why would you ever choose to fight a mutated enemy? Well, they seem to have guaranteed red rarity drops, a new thing that's going to happen in this mode. These are weapons that drop 2 positive passives but come with 1 negative, rather than just having 1 positive passive like we see with weapons now. So yeah, that's something that's new here, positive and negative passives, but also on relics too. Examples we've seen of this would be, say, the staff, improved magic negation, but then also improved incantation passives, but then the downside is impaired physical damage negation, as this one's 1 negative. There's this Great Axe, with HP on attacks, as well as taking damage boost through damage negation, but then we have a new negative passive, increased damage from the blue zone. So, new negatives exist and they'll be found on this gear. Through red weapons, you will be able to stack some insane passives to gain a lot of strength, as long as you carefully manage the negatives and make sure you can manage them. In regards to night bosses and the Night Lord, they don't seem like they can actually mutate, which definitely reduces the RNG horror there, but they're still going to get worse by the scaling difficulty of the depths, like everything else. Now, I said there's some sort of rank system. In short, if you win, you get rating in this mode, which at certain amounts you'll reach the next rank. So when you queue, you'll be put with higher ranked players around your own level, so it's a skill-based matchmaking system. That doesn't exist in the game right now. The ranks seem to go up to 5 though, and it looks like it's going to initially be easy to get out of your starting rank, but naturally it'll get harder. Finally, for that topic, we have the new Deep of Night relics though. They only work in that new mode and again have pros and cons. With these, you can have up to 6 relics equipped compared to the normal 3, and in this example, we see familiar pro passives, but then this negative of continuous HP loss in exchange. They definitely don't show us all of the new relic passives or new concepts, so let's highlight that new information. There are dormant power relics and there are stat modifying relics. For the dormant power ones, you can choose a preferred weapon type for your Nightfarer, changing the boss pool drop potential. So a simple example of that is Wilder and his usual preferred weapon being Greatsword. With a relic like that, you could change it to a different weapon, like Great Axe. It doesn't seem like you're going to get a special moveset, like you're suddenly getting the moveset of, say, Raider, but at the same time, it's data mining stuff, we don't really know. What it will do for sure is change drop potential, where basically when you defeat a boss, you get dormant powers, there's a good chance you'll be offered a weapon of your character's preferred weapon type, which is why you usually get what you're looking for. So this relic change will change the drop potential, while removing the previously preferred weapon type from the pool. On the other hand, you have the stat modifying relics, which seem quite strange. Each Nightfarer is going to get 2 relics for this concept. Things like you're going to get this amount of mind in exchange for this amount of vigor. So say plus 10 mind, but minus 10 vigor or something like that. And looking at the 2 choices you have per Nightfarer, most of them seem to have one reasonable option, while the other's not amazing. And some Nightfarers definitely have better and worse options. We're going to have to see how this really turns out. Either way, this concept definitely breathes some life into the Nightfarers and what's possible for them, and I hope they commit harder to it for the whole roguelike concept to finally exist. Finally, some quick topics we know a lot less about, so take these like the least seriously. First up, there's a title of something called the Dreadlord being brought up. Right now, we don't know what that is, but reasonable speculation would suggest, hey, is that a new boss, or just a new title for a familiar boss? Maybe the Dreadlord just refers to a new name for Holster in his Everdark form. So like, instead of a Night Lord, he's considered a Dreadlord. But it could also be something completely different, like maybe Dreadlords or what you call the Night Lords in the new mode. Another thing was the fact that we're seeing names of enemies that aren't in the game right now after patch 1.02. You've got Blood Fiends and Mesmer units, bigger enemies like the Ghost Flame Dragons, and even the Inquisitor, which was a boss at the forest entrance in Shadow of the Erdtree. Basically, we're seeing names of Shadow of the Erdtree enemies that aren't in the game right now. Will they come in an update or part of the DLC? We don't know. Lastly, we do have some very limited concepts about the new Nightfarers. One of them seems to lean into intelligence and dex as a concept, so that's actually similar to Duchess. There's phrases around buffing allies and debuffing enemies, which does sound unique, which is great. A kind of controller, helping allies and controlling enemies. While the other is potentially that martial art style. Even less is known about this one, but it seems to be associated with some sort of trance mode, which might be triggering auto dodges and maybe countering too. So yeah, that kind of sounds like martial arts. Though it does look like they're tied to hammers as maybe their preferred weapon, so who's to say? But yeah, that section's a lot less certain, a lot vaguer, don't take it too seriously, just interesting to look at. So there you have it, that's basically what we know that's in the files right now that's reasonable to at least talk about. Obviously the last section being the most vague and probably more leaning towards DLC content and not stuff I'd expect to see on the 11th of September when we get the Deep of Night mode. Hopefully we do get some more concrete information about that mode in the coming days, because obviously from the data mining information there's a lot more to it than it actually appears from their own announcements, which aren't as exciting by comparison. On the bright side, it does mean we don't have long to wait. It will break up the flow of expected Everdark bosses. Will we get Everdark Yolster and when? Honestly don't know. Maybe it's that Dreadlord. But I was expecting the Deep of Night mode to come in the DLC and not now, so I think that's pretty cool. We'll be covering it all as it happens though, and new information whenever we have it, so be sure to check back. Until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.